Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande Haribol. So reading from Srila Prabhupada, he built a house in which the whole world can live. This chapter is entitled Only He Could Lead Them. Seeing this appearance of Lord Jagannath in San Francisco as the will of Krishna, Swamiji said that they should be careful to receive and worship Lord Jagannath properly. If Shyama could carve the forms, Swamiji said he would personally install them in the temple, and the devotees could then begin worshipping the deities. San Francisco, he said, could be renamed New Jagannath Puri. He chanted, Jagannatha Swami, Nayana Patagami, Bhavatume. This is a mantra for Lord Jagannath, he said. Jagannath means Lord of the universe. O Lord of the universe, kindly be visible unto me. It is very auspicious that he has chosen to appear here. Shyamasundar bought 3 large blocks of hardwood, and Swamiji made a sketch and pointed out a number of details. Using the small statues, Shyamasundar calculated ratios and new dimensions and began carving on the balcony of his apartment. Meanwhile, the devotees bought the rest of the tiny Jagannaths from Cost Plus, and it became a fashion to glue a little Jagannath to a simple necklace and wear him around the neck. Because Lord Jagannath was very liberal and merciful to the most fallen, Swamiji explained, the devotees soon be able to worship him in their temple. The worship of the forms of Radha and Krishna in the temple required very high, strict standards, which the devotees were not yet able to meet. But Lord Jagannath was so merciful that he could be worshipped in a simple way, mostly by chanting Hare Krishna. And if the devotees weren't very advanced, gradually, as they progressed in spiritual life, Swamiji would introduce them more and more of the detailed practices of deity worship, along with the deep theological understanding that supports it. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Jagannatha ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 4, text number 53 and 54. We'll finish this chapter and we'll start at chapter 5. So I just go through these verses myself. Tvato dashtat praja sarva mituni bhuya mayaya midiyaya bhavishyanti harishyanti cha me balim. After you give birth to many hundreds and thousands of children, they will also be captivated by illusory energy and will engage like you in sexual intercourse. But because of my mercy to you and them, they will also be able to give me presentations in devotion. Shishuka uvacha ityuktvami shatastasya bhagavan vishwabhavana swapnopalabaritaiva tatraivantardade hari. Translation. Shukadev Goswami continued, after the creator of the entire universe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, had spoken in this way in the presence of Prajapati Daksha, he immediately disappeared, as if he were an object experienced in a dream. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 6th canto, 4th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Hamsa Guhya Prayers Offered to the Lord by Prajapati Daksha. Chapter 5. Prajapati Narada Muni cursed by Prajapati Daksha. This chapter relates how all the sons of Daksha were delivered from the clutches of the material energy by following the advice of Narada, who was therefore cursed by Daksha. Influenced by the external energy of Lord Vishnu, Prajapati Daksha begot 10,000 sons in the womb of his wife Pancha Jani. These sons, who were all of the same character and mentality, were known as the Haryashvas. Ordered by their father to create more and more population, the Haryashvas went west to the place where the river Sindhu, now the Indus, meets the Arabian Sea. In those days, this was the site of a holy lake named Narayan Saras, where there were many saintly persons. The Haryashvas began practicing austerities, penances, and meditation, which are the engagements of the highly exalted, renounced order of life. However, when Srila Narada Muni saw these boys engaged in such commendable austerities simply for material creation, he thought it better to release them from this tendency. Narada Muni described to the boys their ultimate goal of life and advised them not to become ordinary karmis to beget children. Thus, all the sons of Daksha became enlightened and left, never to return. Prajapati Daksha, who was very sad at the loss of his sons, begot 1,000 more sons in the womb of his wife, Panchajani, and ordered them to increase progeny. These sons, who were named the Sava Lashvas, also engaged in worshipping Lord Vishnu to beget children. But Narada Muni convinced them to become mendicants and not beget children. Foiled twice in his attempts to increase population, Prajapati Daksha became most angry at Narada Muni and cursed him, saying that in the future he would not be able to stay anywhere. Since Narada Muni, being fully qualified, was fixed in tolerance, he accepted Daksha's curse. So there's a few verses here that we'll go through until we reach purport. Srila Shukadeva Goswami continued, impelled by the illusory energy of the Lord Vishnu, Prajapati Daksha begot 10,000 sons in the womb of Panchajani, Atsikni. My dear king, these sons were called the Haryashvas. My dear king, all the sons of Prajapati Daksha were alike in being very gentle and obedient to the orders of their father. When their father ordered them to beget children, they all went in the western direction. In the west, where the river Sindhu meets the sea, there is a great place of pilgrimage known as Narayana Saras. Many sages and other advanced in spiritual consciousness live there. In that holy place, the Haryashvas began regularly touching the lake's waters and bathing in them. Gradually, becoming very much purified, they became inclined toward the activities of Paramahamsas. Nevertheless, because their father had ordered them to increase the population, they performed severe austerities to fulfill his desires. One day, when the great sage Narada saw those boys performing such fine austerities to increase the population, Narada approached them. So that's this verses 6 till 8. Uvacha chata haryashva katam srakshyata vaipraja adrishtvantam bhuvoyuyam Balishabhata palaka tataika purusham rashtram bilam chadrishta nirgamam bahurupam striyam chapi pumamsam pumshalipatim nadim ubayanto vaham pancha panchad bhutam griham kvachidam samchitrakatam kshaurapaviyam swayam brahmi Uvacha chatta haryashva katam srakshyata vai praja adrishtvantam bhuvoyuyam balishabhata palaka tataika purusham rashtram Bilam cha drishta nirgamam bahurupam striyam chapi pumamsam pumshchalipatim nadimubayatováham pancha panchadbhutam griham kvachidam samchitrakatam kshorapavyam swayam brahmi. Anyone else would like to try? Matajis. Vachachata Haryashva Katam Srakshyata Vai Praja Adrishtvantam Bhuvayuyam Balishabhata Palaka Tataika Purusham Rashtram Bilam Chadrishtan Nirgamam Bahurupam Striyam Chapi Pumam Sampumshchalipatim Nadinabayanto Vaham Pancha Panchadbhutam Griham Kachitlam Samchitrakatam Kshaurapaviyam Swayam Brahmi Uvacha. He said, Cha, also, Atha, thus, Haryashva, O Haryashvas, sons of Prajapati Daksha, Katam, why, Srakshyata, you will beget, Vai, indeed, Praja, progeny, Adrishtva, having not seen, Antam, the end, Bhuva, of this earth, Yuyam, all of you, Balisha, inexperienced, Bata, alas, Palaka, although ruling princess, Tata, so also, Eka, one, Purusham, man, Rashtram, kingdom, Bilam, the whole, Cha, also, Adrishta Nirgamam, from which there is no coming out, Bahurupam, taking many forms, Striyam, the woman, Cha, and Api, even Pumamsam, the man, Pumshchalipatim, the husband of a prostitute, Nadim, a river, Ubayata, in both ways, Vaham, which flows, Pancha Pancha, or 5 multiplied by 5, 25. Adbhutam, a wonder. Griham, the house. Kvachit, somewhere. Hamsam, a swan. Chitrakatam, whose story is wonderful. Kshorapavyam, made of sharp razors and thunderbolts. Swayam, itself. Brahmi, revolving. Translation of purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. The great sage Narada said, "My dear Haryashvas, who have not seen the extremities of the earth, there is a kingdom where only one man lives, and where there is a hole from which, having entered, no one emerges. A woman there who is extremely unchaste adorns herself with various attractive dresses, and the man who lives there is her husband. In that kingdom, there is a river flowing in both directions, a wonderful home made of 25 materials, a swan that vibrates various sounds, an automatically revolving object made of sharp razors and thunderbolts. You have not seen all this, and therefore you are inexperienced boys without advanced knowledge. How then will you create progeny?" Purport. Narada Muni saw that the boys known as the Haryashvas were already purified because of living in that holy place and were practically ready for liberation. Why then should they be encouraged to become entangled in family life, which is so dark that once having entered it, one cannot leave it? Through this analogy, Narada Muni asked them to consider why they should follow their father's order to be entangled in family life. Indirectly, he asked them to find within the course of their hearts the situation of the Supersoul, Lord Vishnu, for then they would truly be experienced. In other words, one who is too involved in his material environment and does not look within the core of his heart is increasingly entangled in the illusory energy. Narada Muni's purpose was to get the sons of Prajapati Daksha to divert their attention towards spiritual realization instead of involving themselves in the ordinary but complicated affairs of propagation. The same advice was given by Prahlad Maharaj to his father, Bhagavatam 755. Tatsadu manye suravarya dehinam sada samudvigna dviyam asadgrahat hitvatma patam griham andakupam vanam gato yaddarim ashrayeta. In the dark well of family life, one is always full of anxiety because of having accepted a temporary body. If one wants to free himself from this anxiety, one should immediately leave family life and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Vrindavan. Narada Muni advised the Haryashvas not to enter household life. Since they were already advanced in spiritual knowledge, why should they be entangled in that way? Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Satam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shirada Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langaite girim yat kripata maham vande Shri Gurum Dina Taranam. By the mercy of spiritual master, blind man can see the stars, lame man can cross the mountains, and dumb man can speak eloquently. I therefore offer my respectful obeisance unto lotus feet of my spiritual master. The translation again. The great sage Narada said, "My dear Haryashvas, you have not seen the extremities of the earth. There is a kingdom where only one man lives, and where there is a hole from which, having entered, no one emerges. A woman there, who is extremely unchaste, adorns herself with various attractive dresses, and the man who lives there is her husband. In that kingdom, there is a river flowing in both directions, a wonderful home made of 25 materials, a swan that vibrates various sounds, an automatically revolving object made of sharp razors and thunderbolts. You have not seen all this, and therefore you are inexperienced boys without advanced knowledge. How then will you create progeny?" So we're learning so much from this pastime. One very, very significant lesson is that before one can do anything sustainable, because this is a big word, sustainability, and Sanatan Dharma is the ultimate sustainability. Unless one engages in Sanatan Dharma, nothing will last. The only everlasting activity is the Sanatan Dharma, is the eternal activity of the soul. So in order for something to truly be sustainable and work sustainably, it has to be done as a service of the Lord. And we can see that this principle was known even to those who even materially motivated, just like Daksha. He had some material motivation. He had the desire to increase progeny in this material world. But before he entered the activity, he knew that it's not possible to be successful in one's activity without the blessings of Vaishnavas. I believe it was Pradyumna Prabhu who mentioned the another day about the blessings on a subtle level. It has to be done without those blessings. It's just like a material karmic activity, just comes and goes. There is nothing lasts. We can see historically, nothing lasts except the glory of pure devotional service. We read about these great acharyas, teachers, um, devotees of the Lord, millions of years later, and we're learning from their devotion about how to engage in the eternal activity of the soul. So even Daksha, who was materially motivated, he first performed austerities, and he also taught others, his sons and children. He also taught them to perform first the tapasya that Jambalan Prabhu spoke another day. He performed the very special tapasya of Sankirtan. Is the Harinam Sankirtan, the distribution of the holy name of the Lord, and there is also recorded kirtan in the books. So engaging in that activity and distribution of that activity is considered the greatest tapasya and sacrifice and austerity in this age. Shishikodanitaya Maya Purushashi Ki Jai. It's a foundational principle. Is the foundational principle that the universe has started from it. So you cannot be avoided. It doesn't sound maybe sometimes very inspiring. It can be a little bit a scary word, tapasya, austerity. But in this age, that tapasya, that austerity culminates in a proper chanting of the holy name. This is the main activity and austerity that we have to perform to purify our existence and qualify ourselves for our eternal devotional service and also for distribution of devotional service. That tapasya is required. We cannot avoid it. And as we can see, Haryashvas did it, Daksha did it, and Brahma, before actually he launched this universe, before he launched into the action, he first prayed to the Lord and performed tapasya and meditation. So we are kind of influenced by the mode of passion and material world, and even we may start practicing Krishna consciousness, but we have to establish this principle before jumping into the action. We have to get the mercy of the Lord and get the blessings of the Lord, and that includes a few different principles. And one of them is prayer. One has to pray to the Lord. One has to get the blessings of the Vaishnavas for performing any particular type of activity. We can see that Prabhupada's journey before he went out to share Krishna consciousness is full of this prayer. He spent time in Radha Damodar temple. There is also historical accounts of how he went to Mayapur and used to visit Advaita Acharya's house, used to pray there, used to pray at Rupa Goswami Samadhi, Sanatana Goswami Samadhi, when he was living there. We prayed to Radha Damodar. So the prayer is there exemplified by great devotees of the Lord to get the mercy, to get the blessing, to get the power to be able to share something, to speak powerfully that penetrates people's hearts. It is considered the foundational prayer of ISKCON is Prabhupada's prayers before entering United States. He written this very famous prayer where he said, if make me dance as you like. You're the Supreme Lord, you're Supreme Controller. By your arrangement in reciprocation with material desires of living entities, they all came under the spell of material energy, and by your mercy you can release people from that material energy. So it's not us who can release people from an illusion. It's not us who can free people from their habits, entanglement, and etc. It is actually mercy of the Lord. And one of the main principles that we need to do to share Krishna consciousness is to teach the same principle, apply in our own principle this of prayer, and teach others. But prayer is not enough. It is also requires an action. So we're invoking the blessings, we're invoking the mercy, we're begging from the Lord for the mercy, and also we are then performing an activity, tapasya. But also the activity on a physical level is later on. So just like we know that everything happens by Krishna's desire, which is the most subtle thing, is the desire. The will of the Lord is so powerful that everything what he wants happens just by him desiring to do so. So it's the most subtle thing. So if we can align ourselves with that desire, then we can become empowered. And of course, there is a material kind of desire that Daksha is doing, is approaching the Lord with material desire, asking to fulfill his desire. But the most powerful thing to do is to ask, how can I please you? How can I fulfill your desire, my Lord? So then the next stage that we do in our action to get the mercy is to perform tapasya. And the tapasya for this age is chanting the holy name of the Lord. We have an opportunity to perform the greatest tapasya. And in fact, it is said in Bhagavad Gita, there is a section where it is Krishna says, what is the greatest sacrifice? Because tapasya and sacrifice is synonymous, is something that we need to struggle, is something that we need to struggle to work hard. And again, we think that the struggle is on a physical level, But actually, the greatest sacrifice that the soul can perform is to put aside one's desires, to put aside one's mental situation, condition, struggles, likes and dislikes, at least for the time being, and just to focus on the holy name. There is no greater sacrifice because we are so self absorbed in just thinking what I want, what I'm gonna eat today, when is the breakfast, what when is gonna class gonna finish. um, but I mean, some desires, because we all are devotees, we have a spiritual desires, and I'm sure we have some desires to please Krishna there as well. But there is also so many other things that we want for ourselves, selfish desires. So putting that aside for a little while, just that self-absorption, being completely self-absorbed about me and what I want and what I want to do today and what I like and I don't like, just putting that aside for the time being is considered the greatest sacrifice you can do. The greatest, because this is so dear, everything about ourselves, that's why we're in this material world, everything about ourselves is so dear to us. We are so attached to about everything about ourselves, personally speaking. um, but to put that aside and to hear the holy name is the greatest austerity, is the greatest sacrifice, especially in this age of Kali. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, among all the sacrifices and austerities, the greatest sacrifice and austerity is japa. Is japa, because we put aside everything to hear the holy name of the Lord. So if we can establish this as the foundational principle in our life, the prayer and japa is also a prayer, and it's also the most powerful purification, and it is also the goal of all of our activities, is to develop love for Krishna, and Krishna is present there in his holy name. Uh, so this is how to apply the same principle that Haryashvas did, Daksha did, is by this very strong, powerful austerity. And you can see that even materially contaminated person and materially motivated person, by performing a sacrifice, performing that principle, it purifies us. We may even we enter often the spiritual life with some material motivation. That's natural. That's why we are here in the material world. But by performing it, slowly but surely, we become purified and we become qualified. And that's what happened to Haryashvas. They were executing the order of Father to increase the progeny and population. But what is the reason for all this population? What is the reason for all this existence? Is not just to increase more and more living entities. It is actually to create a facility to go back to Godhead. So if that principle is fulfilled, then everything else is no more required. So Narada Muni noticed that the Haryashvas, they actually became purified by performing tapasya, even if it was materially motivated. And this is the expertise of spiritual teacher, and it has to be, we have to become expert as well. So what one person's food is another person's poison. So what is one instruction that might be suitable for one person, it may be completely inappropriate for another person. So you can see Narada Muni has very expertly said to Haryashvas not to bother about the family life. And family life is here is very even condemned. We have to understand so how to balance. Yesterday we heard about the family life that can be very good, and now today we hear that is the darkest well. How to understand this? How to balance this out. And this is the idea that for it can become a dark well, and everything can become a dark well when it is not done properly, when we become very extremely attached and lost. Dark well means like there is no light, there is no hope, and etc. And you can see that people often become entangled in that situations, when there is no Krishna consciousness. So when speaking about dark well, we are speaking about the family life that has no Krishna consciousness. Because when there is no Krishna consciousness, because of the higher taste and because awakening of the soul, it creates a detachment inside of the living entity. It awakens the detachment, and so therefore one can navigate without becoming completely attached. But when there is no Krishna consciousness, it becomes a place where people become completely attached to that material activity, to material situation, to the wife, children, and etc. And that creates many births after births after births. Man becomes a woman attached to women. Women becomes a man who is attached to a man, and then it's like that. Sex change, birth after birth after birth, flickering from one gender to another, from one situation to another, never ending. This is called nitya bada. That means eternally conditioned situation. There is no hope, and that way it is considered dark well. This material existence becomes dark well because birth after birth after birth, we're suffering miserably, all sorts of tribulations coming from our karma. Uh, and and this is why he's pointing out, Narada Muni, that you're not aware of this. You're trying to increase the population, but you're not aware the ultimate cause of this existence is actually to go back, and the only reason for population and propagation of children is to create a progeny that will become Krishna conscious, as Pradyumna Prabhu was explaining yesterday. And because with that Krishna consciousness, we can conquer the repeated birth and death. So, so Narada Muni seeing that they actually became sufficiently purified, that there is no need for them to enter the family life, and it will be in a rare occasions, and Narada Muni has assessed very intelligently that these people are not necessary for them to enter family life, and he preached to them, explaining the situation, and they dedicated themselves just to Krishna consciousness and going back to Godhead. So it's not, for everyone. This instruction is not for everyone, but those who can take this up in showing the very strong connection to Krishna and Vrindavan, who can develop that very strong relationship without going to the family life, then that can be encouraged, and you can see, that it will be encouraged. Uh, but for most of people, they need to grow through the family life and be Krishna conscious in the family life. And as you can see, it's a wonderful ashram for spiritual realization when it's done properly, and with proper guidance and education. So you have to assess for what is the best instruction for a particular type of person, and that's why you have to become a preacher. It's not black and white. It's not one rule for everyone that applies to everyone, and one has to uh, become very well versed in the shastras and know how to give appropriate, necessary instruction for a particular individual. And therefore, we need to also get to know individuals to see what is the best instruction for them in their particular circumstances. And we have to also be willing to get that instruction and find a person who is qualified for us to give instruction, that would not spoil our spiritual life, but help us in the spiritual life, and then take it very seriously and go forward. So, are there any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
The reason it's referred to as an andekupe, a dark well, because when you fall down a dark well, then even though you cry for help, nobody listens.
Yes.
And so I was reflecting on, is that the same situation? Is that the same as the situation as somebody that takes up household alive and then he starts to find it very difficult and he's calling out for help? And maybe the other ashrams don't feel, well, that's your problem now. You know, you've made your bed, sleep in it. So you can hear this little voice crying out from the well, oh no, this is terrible. But he may not have he may not get the support that he wants,
Mm-hmm.
And so really, we could say, well, that's his problem, but we could also say, well, as a community, it's everybody else's problem in the community if they can't help somebody that's struggling, in the dark well.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it's interesting also, you were saying it has to be open to feedback. He needs some shiksha, someone he can accept as a shiksha guru, somebody who he'll listen to and take the feedback, so that he can help himself. He doesn't just need somebody that's going to go around and play darts with him, or just say he's a great guy. He needs someone that can actually guide him out of it.
Yes. Nice. So this principle of performing some tapasya and sacrifice in a relationship even before entering family life, Pradyumna Prabhu touched upon this of actually that if one has been really good brahmachari, it can become a good grihasta. So if we are in the situation, to get some training in life, whether you're gonna be grihasta or brahmachari, for the rest of the life, that's almost secondary. But the primary thing is like, can you get a really strong training in Krishna consciousness? If you have opportunity to spend some time in a temple and live in a temple and perform like a sacrifice of rising early, doing the service, do things that you may not necessarily like to do sometimes, or maybe sometimes things that you like to do. If you perform that sacrifice, study the scriptures, develop the taste for the Shastra, let's not miss this opportunity. If you have opportunity in life to be able to do that, whether in earlier or later stages in life, whether after we went through the marriage or before the marriage, is just like getting that sacrifice and getting that understanding very, very much. It's almost not like optional. We must do this. This is the Vedic system, is to perform that sacrifice. And then we can enter the further stages of life, whether you're entering grihastha life from brahmachari, you will be strong, and able to resist the temptations and challenges. You will be willing to take some guidance, because as brahmachari you develop some humility, not puffed up. So like going through this, it may feel like, oh, this is going to be very difficult, why I should do this. No, we should go through this. We must go through this, through that some degree of rigidness and training and controlling the senses and the mind and etc. And then in the future, whatever is gonna wait for us, whether it's the hasta life or some other vanaprastha, then we are strongly prepared for for this, and it won't be the dark well. Then it will be fully Krishna conscious life and fully Krishna conscious existence. So if you're early starter or later starter, whatever the situation may be, very, very much encourage everybody, do not hesitate. Krishna says in a chapter, do not hesitate and do not worry, but perform the sacrifice, perform some rigid discipline in your life. You will be happy. This is the foundation of happiness. And then family life won't be a dark well. It will be, the path to the Vrindavan. And just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, I came back one day home and he saw it. He saw Vrindavan. He saw Vrindavan in his home. So I don't know if that answers this question, but I wanted to emphasize, like the essence of that it doesn't become a dark well is because of the training that we have to undergo before entering the family life. So Stovakir Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Granth Srimad bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande,
His Grace Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu ki.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki.